Mitra, today we're going to talk about conscious conflict, where actually fighting with another person symbolically is a practice of growth and expansion. To start off, let's clarify with our audience, what do we mean when we say conflict? What does conflict mean to us? We're defining conflict here as when your expectations, values, or desires don't align with another's. What do we mean when we say conscious conflict versus unconscious conflict? Well, we thought it'd be helpful for you if we share some examples of the difference between the two. One, unconscious conflict happens to us. Conscious conflict is something we choose to engage with intentionally. Two, in unconscious conflict, we seek to eliminate the other's perspective. But in conscious conflict, we seek to understand and integrate different perspectives. And three, in unconscious conflict, we're experiencing fear. And in conscious conflict, we're experiencing a sense of safety led by curiosity. Mitra, let's break these down a little bit more. Which one of these resonates with you most?
Actually, number 3 is my number 1 because with what energy we enter any discussion or any interaction is what determines how we show up. So when I come with the energy of fear, it's very hard to fulfill the first two. I cannot start to understand someone when I am fearful because what I am doing is I'm in protection mode. Remember, my safety is in danger. And I literally I can so relate to that because I remember the last verbal conflict that I had with someone was about intense value challenge.
Mm,
I found myself shaking, and this was like at the dinner table, but
mm,
I was shaking, and I just looked at my hands and I thought, my God, I truly felt unsafe
mm,
because the values that were expressed were so far from safety for me. Of course, these are all personal. It wasn't like nobody was threatening me, but their values were threatening in general.
yeah.
So that's the main thing. And once we clarify that, once we know with what energy we're in this discussion, then it becomes easier to understand or not have sort of intention of eliminating the other person because now we're able to collaborate and integrate and align. But in fear, there is enemy and then there is me. So how can I understand? How can I try to integrate with something or someone that I think it's threatening my very existence?
Mm, yeah. And what comes to me, I think about the times in the past when I've been in conflict with people. I used to be in the family business, and let me tell you, there's a lot of conflict there.
Sure.
When I reflect back on some of these moments, it was so hard to get to that sense of safety because the trigger was so strong, you know? And it's happening unconsciously. And I'm thinking about what I could have done back then to help me get to that sense of safety. One of them is the perspective, right? One thing that it's almost been like a mantra for me has been that it's happening for me, not to me. And at first it might seem crazy to use a mantra like that in certain circumstances because you can't help but to feel like something is happening to you. But what I've found is the more I've used it, the more evidence I find to back it up. Right. And the
Yes.
more evidence I find to back it up, the more effective it is when I remind myself of that. And the other thing was taking moments of pause, right? Even in the midst of the conflict where I feel like reacting in that moment, pausing and taking a breath, even just a breath, one breath before I respond can transform the entire dynamic and bring me closer, at least closer to a sense of safety. Now, you've dealt with so many kinds of people who deal with conflict. What is your experience with what I shared, and then whether or not you think that that would help those people? Are there any other um, perspectives or techniques, if you will, people can use to help them find safety when they're in the midst of conflict?
I actually relate to what you said and do use it both personally and professionally, that you clarify that I am centered, because when you actually breathe or have a mantra point of reference, really, that's what it is, a mind point of reference. We call it mantra. When we do that, that means that we have taken responsibility and action towards our own safety. So I don't need in this discussion for you to make me safe. And that's where we go wrong. We leave our safety or our well-being or our happiness even in the hands of others. And then we feel really frightened when they're not doing anything to protect it the way we want them to. So what you said, pausing, breathing deeply, all of these are ways to come back to safety, because in fear, we breathe very shallow because we want to save energy. We go, just like when we're, running, we're really consuming a lot. So as a result, body wants to save energy. So it just does very shallow breathing. And our point of reference, what we're doing is we're reminding ourselves, we're saying that I'm okay, regardless of how this discussion go. And I think it all goes back to the first point that we said, that in fear, it is an impossibility to really get to the place that we like to get. So when I work with people in conflict, whether, many years ago as a human rights commissioner, as an adjudicator, or now as a mediator in companies, ombudsperson in companies, or between couples and family members, the first thing is to get them to point of safety. That's number one. Exactly what you suggested that we do on our own. I try to facilitate that. Of course,
Mm,
it's their choice. But the second thing is I ask them, what is your agenda for this session? And it's really interesting that very rarely people are able to um, clearly answer that,
mm,
because what I'm doing is I'm rattling the understanding and collaboration. They have come to win. So the agenda that we come with, and of course, and it's understandable. It's not a criticism. It's an observation that we come to win. And whenever we want to win, goes back to point one. I only want to win when I feel I am in fear and it's something that I have is in danger, or something that I want to have is in
mm,
danger. So clarifying your agenda, I have come to have this discussion with you, Ben, so that we can come up with something better than when we as individuals came to the table. That's
mm,
very different than saying, I'm going to show him, I'm going to show Ben
mm,
that he's wrong. So I've already come with an agenda. That all says that I've come to win, which means all of those things, the two initial aspects that you said, they get compromised automatically. I don't want to integrate with you. And I basically am in fear, and it's happening to me because I'm not in charge. I'm really out of control, if you like. So I think clarifying the agenda, basically taking care of your own safety, which is all the things you said, breathing during, before, and after, and also being conscious that my point of reference is myself. And if you completely disagree with me, I still can be sovereign person and okay person, even though I preferred, depending, sometimes there's money on the table. There's sometimes the partnership and couplehood. I have done work with, which I do not wish to continue, uh, clients, instead of going to court, they come to me to clarify when they're separating. So these are the things that might be very important, but nevertheless, in my core, I can still be safe, even if I lose the money we discussed, I lose the things that I would like you to give me.
mm,
So it's a very, very intense human experience. And the very word conflict which is fascinating. It came when they initially used it. It's a Latin word. It came when they meant physical altercation.
Mm,
So they never called this a conflict. I don't agree with you and you don't agree with me. Conflict was very physical. It was like
mm,
when you hit me and I hit you back or intend to hit you back.
mm,
But then when it came to English language, it became more sophisticated: conflict of interest,
mm.
conflict of ideas, conflict in our political, views. But conflict in its essence came from a word of fighting and being against, being in war zone, personal war zones with each other. So I prefer to use it disagreements, which is a lighter version of conflict, because
Mm.
the very word of conflict brings with itself a history, energy, and a memory, which it's hard to work through it.
Yeah, it's really interesting you bring that up because by calling it a conflict and associating with a conflict, inherent in that is there is that fear and that desire to win, right? It really stuck out to me when you mentioned that when you ask about what their agenda is, that it comes out that it is oftentimes to win. That's okay. If your agenda is to win, that's totally okay. The question I have, is that really what you want? Is that really what you want? Is it really about winning or is it about something else? And is winning really what you want? Or do you want safety and connection? Do you want to be enjoy? And then the question becomes, if it is those things, which oftentimes I have found for myself and for other people who have mediated, that is the case, that really what they want is that sense of safety and connection, then is you winning going to get you that? Just having an honest conversation with yourself. Maybe it does. Maybe it does. And it's worth reflecting on your past. When has winning in a disagreement helped you come closer to someone? It could be the case. But this is how you bring curiosity into your positions and into these disagreements that you have with people. What are your thoughts on what I just shared, Mitra?
No, I think you are right on. And the answer that I received when I asked that question is that yes, but it goes away. So it does feel good, but not in a sustainable way. So if we had a conflict and I really, like, as they call it, crushed it, young people say, I crushed it. Okay, I crush it. And then I go home and I tell everybody that, how I won the argument and told Ben off. And it feels good for a very short period of time because the lighter aspect of me is very happy. But I think I've said this ad nauseum. Everything we do, everything we want is because we want to experience a state of being, a feeling. So that feeling, because in its essence is dividing us, and we are always seeking balance and unity, like all the cells in our body, then it's impossible that in a sustainable way I am happy. And the way I know that, it's very interesting to watch the human behavior, including mine, that the more I talk about it and I want others to buy into my idea, the more I know that I am in my fear and I am in a place that I need others to tell me this was okay.
Mm,
So when I truly win, whatever that means, which means really in its essence, really means I arrived at unity, integration, and oneness.
mm,
That's what really, truly winning is, which
mm.
does not exclude the other parties.
There is no loser.
There
It's a
is no loser.
win-win.
It's a win-win.
Yeah.
And that I don't need many witnesses and cheerleaders. You say, Mitra, how did your session with such and such and go? I said, it was great. It was great. But when I'm trying to convince you, they said this and I said that, don't you think? We're wanting to have people to agree with us. And that's when I know whenever I want to have people agree with me, other people that not the person I thought I lost to or won from, then I know that there must be a doubt there. Why do I need the whole army to agree with me in order for me to feel good? That's a great question to ask yourself. When it's a win-win, as you called it, and then we're all good. I don't need anything more than that. I have got my prize. But when the prize of unity has not been achieved because I saw you as other, so there's us, me, and then there's other, then that satisfaction that we're looking for outside of us is very, very hard to achieve, almost impossible to achieve, because I know I feel difficult. I feel really, really not one, which is my natural state of being that brings me through joy.
So I can hear what I might have thought if I heard that when I was listening. And then maybe 5 years ago, me, I would be like, yeah, but if I don't defend myself, then that's unfair. It's unfair to me. And they're going to know that they can take advantage of me in the future. So there's a fear of being taken advantage of.
Yes. And to
And
that I say represent yourself. Representing it's very different than winning. So you say something, and I'm sure as people are listening to us, they can relate to this times that they really felt, um, if I don't say anything right now, I'm going to not be happy with myself. And believe me, I get in those points and those situations, especially these days when everything is charged, quite often. So then the decision is, it's not about whether or not I express myself. It's about how do I do it? So we're talking about how, not if. If you feel that you need to, of course you have to. I always say there's a very highly paid attorney that lives within all of us. And when they do not come out and say what we want to say, we get very upset with ourselves. So I'm all for expression, but how do I do it and why do I do it? Do I do it? We go back to the intention and the agenda. Um, when we're not in fear, it's an intention. When we are in fear, is an agenda. If I've come to win, is different than when I have come to learn, grow, and that's why what you said really is important. Is it happening to me? Or is it happening for me or through me? Even more importantly, it's happening through me. Growth is happening through me. And that's a completely different thing. If that has happened to you, what makes it worthwhile is my invitation is for you to say, what is it that I missed? What was the message? What was the gift? I paid the price. Let me get the prize. What
Mhm.
was the gift in that? What did I need to learn that I got involved in this discussion? And if you get the price is worth it always. Even if I compromised my relationship with you, it is worth it because I really needed to get to that place because depending on my consciousness in the moment, sometimes a normal conversation will get me there and sometimes a real altercation will get me there. And that's fine. We're all human and we get there. But the question is, did I get my prize? Did I learn a lesson? Would I do it slightly or hopefully completely differently next time when I am in that situation? So,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And that reminds me of another mindset that has been so crucial as I've navigated conflict or disagreement, which has been I am 100% responsible for my inner experience. I
a good
am
one.
100% responsible for my inner experience. That nobody actually has the power to hurt me unless I allow them to. That I am only vulnerable to other people to the extent that one, I allow them to, and to the extent that I believe that I am vulnerable, even. When I have that mindset, it opens up a new set of questions for me.
What are the questions?
So if I am 100% responsible, and we can play with this, right? You don't have to agree with what I'm saying, by the way, you, the listener. You could just play with the idea. What if I was 100% responsible for how I'm feeling? Well, if that's the case, then how am I creating this inner experience of not feeling safety for myself when this other person behaves in a certain way or says something to me? Is it because maybe some part of me might believe that about myself and I'm scared about facing that aspect of myself? If someone maybe insults my intelligence, why am I giving power to that if it is my responsibility? Does some part of me actually believe that about myself? If it does, and oftentimes it does, some part of me is believing, where is that coming from? Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but why, w- w- what is causing me to believe that about myself? So now it's not even about them. Now I'm thinking about my relationship to myself.
Mm.
Why do I believe that about myself? Because if I didn't, what their comment wouldn't have had an effect on me. So experimenting with that mindset that I am 100% responsible for my inner experience can open up a new set of inquiry, a new set of questions, and an opportunity. Going back to your comment, that did I get the prize in this? Because I see conflict as new information that I can get about myself. What can I learn about myself through this process? And almost inevitably, if I do it genuinely and truly with curiosity and I breathe through the process, invariably I get clarity and I realize, oh my God, the thing that bothered me about what they did or their position is irrelevant to me now. Or I still hold my position, but it doesn't have a charge. And it just becomes a choice for them. I set a boundary. I might have a boundary. I set the boundary. And they might or might not honor it. And whether they do or they don't, it's okay.
Let me be devil's advocate.
Okay.
Because somebody's thinking as they're listening to you, what if it's not about me? What if it's about the world? What if I know when I started shaking it was about that? What about is about people in the world, majority of people in the world? And I really feel really shaken when I hear someone, a person with a good heart that I know, is so destructive in their values, in my view. What do I do then? What do you do then?
My question to you is, would be, what perspectives do you have right now? What beliefs do you have that are causing you to feel that way? For example, maybe some part of you might believe that you're somewhat responsible, and maybe some part of you is carrying that burden. And that question becomes, is it really true that it is your burden and your responsibility? If it is, okay, then great. What you're feeling can be justified. And if it is not, if you're carrying a burden, if you're taking a responsibility that really isn't yours, but you're choosing to take that responsibility, and you're creating and choosing that, you're creating that conflict or that pain within yourself, then just a choice.
And in this particular case, the answer is that was a great question, by the way. Um, it is my responsibility. It is everybody's responsibility. But what I pondered when you asked that question, it is more than what I need to take. But it is every human being's responsibility. But I can only take my portion and
Y-
not more than that.
Yeah, and let me clarify what I mean by responsibility, because there's two definitions of responsibility. There's two perspectives. There's the definition of responsibility, which is really the ability to respond to a situation, the free will to respond in whichever way you choose. And there is the definition of responsibility, which is the burden, which is that it's on me. And if I don't, then something bad will happen, or that I have to bear something. So there's two versions of responsibility. And what you're talking about is the conscious definition of responsibility, which is the ability to respond. And our human nature wants, is compassionate, is loving. And when I see someone who is suffering, I want to respond. The key is that I can respond without taking the burden of their pain and their suffering.
It's also the pain of observation sometimes for me, because the very person that I was trying to convince about what my views were, it was very interesting. The very person is suffering from the consequences of the very value they were expressing. It's really interesting when we do that as human beings. Like if I told you, I can't believe people talk behind my back and that I'm really suffering. Okay. And then I start talking behind other people's back, not understanding that this cycle will continue if I continue doing that.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and then they go in and express their, complaints about how much unfair they have been treated and how unfairly the world is towards them. And then that stops, and then they start telling me about how bad other people are.
Mm.
And it was just like, it's so obvious. Of course, what is obvious to us is not obvious to everybody. We all have our blind spots. My invitation, as people are listening to us, to them, is to see, where are you? Where am I really contributing to the very thing that I'm complaining about?
Mm.
And I think that is the true human responsibility, as opposed to just what to exchange in a conflict, to just really look at that. And that was actually one of the things that I took away from me, because the fact that I was sensitive about this matter told me that I must be identifying with some part of this.
Yeah.
And, or as I said, I don't want to discount the other part, that true, I do. That is one of my, areas that I need to work on, that I take more responsibility, that I need to or I can. And that makes it extremely heavy for me. That's one of the reasons I cannot watch the news, because I truly feel one with anybody that is suffering. And it's very hard to work through that and be neutral and just listen to it as if it's just the news coming.
Hmm.
So, to bring the point back, I think what is important here is to look at ourselves. I think that's what we're saying in a very general sense. Before we go out, we need to go in, and then going out becomes much, much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. And that reminds me of another key mindset that has helped me a lot, which is everyone and everything is a mirror. Everyone and everything is a mirror of what's happening inside of me. So whenever I find myself judging another person or giving specific advice to another person, those very judgments that I'm making of others, I'm actually, in my personal experience, every time I'm actually judging others or myself in the same way. Or if I'm giving advice to someone, this is always great. When I find myself giving advice to someone, the advice that I'm giving for them is really also advice for
For me,
myself.
yes,
And
yes,
and again, I just want to emphasize this point that these ideas are not meant to be taken at face value. You experiment with them. Could it be true? And could it be true that everything that I observe in others, every criticism that I observe about others, is actually something that I am doing myself, either to myself or to others? It's an interesting experiment. If you genuinely start asking yourself and being curious about, are there any instances where I'm doing that?
yeah, and that is true very much at the psychological and mental level. But sometimes when we go deeper, I just want to add that, because at the energetic level, stories change a bit. And at the energetic level, it comes down to, am I hurting more than my share? You know, because there is, of course, depending our level of consciousness, we experience things at a very different level. We start with just merely physical level. You said, I said, then I said, you said, and you shouldn't have said when I said. So that's at the physical level. And at the mind and mental level, psychological level, is exactly what you're saying, that it's projection and mirroring and all of that. But there's a deeper sense of what's happening, especially at times like this. And I'm saying this because it's important that we shift from psychological to a deeper sense of energetic level, because the times are asking us to do that. That is invitation by all the things that are happening in the world, that we need to drop into a much, much deeper place and go beyond the mind and beyond the physicality. And that is to look at how is this discussion, my words, and the words I'm exposed to, affecting the consciousness, the collective consciousness of the world and the individual consciousness of people in the room. And I think that becomes a completely different story. And we get out of mindset, a mind that is set, and we get into the very fluid and extremely diversified energetic world that looks at things at their root cause, and see, what's going on in this room and how is this affecting the consciousness of the world. Because we know at the energetic level, every word we utter, every intention we set, every thought we think is affecting the collective. And my question is, how am I contributing to that by engaging in this very fashion in this conversation?
I agree, and that's very deep that it's a chord inside of me. It's been something that I've been very conscious of, especially this last year, that my thoughts, all of them, if we operate under the understanding that we're all connected, that all of my thoughts are impacting everybody. And they could be loving thoughts, which impacts everybody, or they can be fearful thoughts or hateful thoughts, which also impact everybody. And I just want to highlight that it's also not a bad thing, right? So we have permission to make mistakes. We have permission to have negative thoughts towards other people and other things. The question is that what you really want? Is that really serving you? Right. So I just want to be very conscientious of this, of pointing this out, because there was a time when I became aware that my thoughts affect others, and I would feel guilty about
Mhm.
having bad thoughts about other people, about experiencing jealousy, about feeling resentment towards that person that I'm having conflict with. And that's okay. That's okay. The question is, it's all about the curiosity, and is that serving me? And what is it? What is it that I really want? And these things just provide us with clarity. And when we have the clarity, we naturally become more loving. That's just what happens. Fearfulness, anger, resentment, these are just it's a result of misunderstanding or misperceiving a situation or a person or yourself. And when we can shine the light on it and we get that understanding, we realize, oh my God, there was nothing to fear to begin with. What they did had nothing actually to do with me. And we become organically, naturally more loving. It's not something we try to do, it's just something that happens.
Yes. And the process may not be as easy as we're talking about. I just want to invite people who are listening to us. It's not as we're sitting at our desk very in a friendly way, talking about a very charged emotion and interaction. It's not as easy as that. But the question is not what has happened. And that's very important. In fact, there is nothing bad or good. There are comfortable things and uncomfortable things that we experience, because if everything adds to us, then there is no bad. But the question is, what do I do with what has happened? So let's say we had a really difficult, challenging so-called conflict between two of us, and somehow it wasn't resolved the way we wanted it to. So now the question is, what do I do with that energy? If I take that energy, or that memory, if you like, and use it for my contemplation, for my growth, at least, because that's the only thing I have a say on, then there was nothing bad happening. But if I use that in order to um, put you down and make sure that everybody dislikes you, call around and say, can you believe it? Ben said this and said that. When I did that, he says this. Then I'm actually, not only do I not benefit from that, but also I'm actually taking it to a deeper place that is harmful to both of us and to the world we live in. So it's not what has happened. When we get to that point that it doesn't matter what happened, what matters is what do I do with what has happened? And that will clear it completely and works everything in a very, very useful way for everybody. So it doesn't matter. I was at Hammer Museum to lead a meditation and a talk, and I was talking about patience the other day. It reminded me of a story that I uh, I was working with caterpillars when I was a child, and I wanted to expedite the journey of the butterfly, so I poked through, pinned through, and
Yeah.
pierced the cocoon. And I was just so sad when my caterpillar died. And I was feeling so guilty. And I went and told my grandmother about this. And she had a very loving disposition. And she told me, if you learn that you cannot expedite life, then the butterfly will forgive you. And that statement, I mean, it was probably about 60 years ago when this happened. It has stayed with me. She has gone. My grandmother has left her body, but that statement that the butterfly, so I literally killed a butterfly in my view as a child. And I'm thinking the butterfly will forgive me. And my grandmother said, yes, the butterfly will forgive you as long as you learned from this, that you cannot hurry and rush life or some things in life.
That's
And
very
I think
sweet.
that's it. That's it. If I got it, the butterflies in my life that I killed, and I've killed many butterflies, they will forgive me, not because they will call me and say, Mitra, I've forgiven you, but because energetically, the outcome of this, say the consciousness that was minus 30, now the outcome is plus 86 because I have learned and grown through it. Now, then it doesn't matter what happened then.
Yeah. Wow, that's so beautiful. Very powerful. Yes. Life is very forgiving, especially when we can take these lessons and learn from them and grow from them. In this episode, it's really interesting. You'll notice, the listener, we have not talked about practical right now tools and techniques for navigating conflict with another person. We've really focused on you in the process and the mindsets that are involved when you're approaching conflict, because we believe that it's at the level of our own mind, right? And if we can shift at the level of our own mind, it's going to naturally, we're going to know how to respond uh, to these disagreements and conflicts that occur in our life. And the techniques or these tools become less important. Although there are very practical and effective ones, which we have covered on other episodes, really the most important is adopting a mindset that is supportive of conscious conflict. And if you are interested in learning more about specific techniques that Mitra and I have used in navigating conflict, we've done an episode, 2 dedicated episodes on this, and we'll drop a link in the show notes here for you to reference that. Mitra, is there anything else you'd like to share before we close this episode?
No, I'd just like to summarize that before or during the conflict, really going in and clarifying our intention, inviting curiosity, and bringing a sense of safety from inside out so that we can show up without fear in the energy of curiosity. Really, the work is an inside job. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mitra. We hope you all benefited from this episode. Have a lovely rest of your week, and until next time.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. For a list of the links and other resources referenced in this episode, check out the podcast description.
If you're benefiting from our podcast, we'd love if you could help us reach more people by subscribing. Your support means the world to us. From our hearts to yours, we thank you.